주시기 바랍니다. 이어서 두 번째 연sab은 소개해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 녹색 경제와 유럽 정책에 관련해서 다양한 연구 프로젝트 세니어 어드바이저로 활발하게 활동을 해주고 계신데요. 지속가능 건축 환경 산업에서 계속 기여해 주고 계시며 이 졸트 로란드 테스 팀장님께서는 현재 유럽 건물 성능 연구소의 팀장을 역임하고 계십니다. 오늘은 특별히 변화를 위한 청사진 건설 부문에서의 전 생애 주기 탄소 감축을 위한 전략을 여러분께 공유해 드리겠습니다. 네, 연단에 올라 주셨는데요. 여러분 힘찬 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다. 큰 박수 부탁드립니다. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from my side as well. It's great to be here with you. I just want to say a big thank you again for the organizers for being chosen the topic of this event today to talk about the importance of the building sector. So, very briefly about us. We are an independent think tank advising governments across Europe, and we do this by providing research to prepare the evidence base for informed policy making. And traditionally, we have been focusing quite a lot on operational energy efficiency, but over the years, and this is very much in line with what has been discussed so far already, we have sought to expand, to broaden up the discussion to include all sources of emissions, that including embodied or hidden emissions in building materials and construction processes as well. But also very importantly, we try to look and integrate the social implications of what we are talking about in terms of climate change transition, and to have a fair distribution of the costs and benefits of the transition. So we heard a lot already about the Korean decarbonization efforts. So therefore, I would propose to talk today about, in comparison, about the global efforts, what's happening outside of Korea, what's happening in the world, and I will then provide a snapshot of Europe, because there are probably some good practice case studies and some recent policy developments which are relevant for the conversation today. So, the Global Status Report, this is the 8th edition, which I'm going to present the key messages from. It has been launched 3 months ago, and we have been one of the co-authors of this annual snapshots and essentially a global reference point for tracking the progress within the building and construction sector. And we are talking about the progress towards Paris Agreement goals, i.e. net zero carbon goals. So what the Global Status Report does is essentially it provides data and information about CO2 emissions as well as energy efficiency, but it provides also a very important overview of the amount of financing, the amount of investments put or channeled into the sector and channeled into decarbonization efforts. And it also provides an overview of what are the policy trends and what are the policy levers on which we have to pull in order to accelerate the transition. So, the conclusion of the report, and this is the key message, is a sobering one, but it's probably also not a surprising one. So the key message is, as we heard already, we are not on track. And the main reasons why we are not on track is because globally, greenhouse gas emissions from the sector are growing, but there is concomitantly also a slowing investment and a slowing policy efforts in the sector, which are all contributing to this slow evolution. So this is a bold statement. I think we need to provide some evidence. So how we know that? So this is essentially the answer. This is the Global Building and Climate Tracker, and we asked the question of where the sector will want to be in 2020. The answer to this is to be net zero carbon by 2050, which you can see on this slide, essentially that is the equivalent of 100 decarbonization points. So this is an index. And we see that this pathway is also aligned with the International Energy Agency pathway to zero carbon. So then the question is, how far we got? And you see, essentially this is, since we started tracking how much we have progressed since in terms of the decarbonization of the sector since 2015, we have progressed quite little. Essentially, we are stagnating. What you see here is that this is an ideal pathway that we should follow by 2030 and then follow it until 2050. The thing that you see here is this gap, decarbonization gap, is now growing. It's growing. Currently, it is 40 basis points. So there is a lack of progress, actually. And the reason why there is a lack of progress is because lack of progress on the key indicators which are building up these index. And this is what I'm going to talk about in a second. Right, so these are the indicators that are currently being used for this composite index, and these are also our levers, these are also the solutions that we need to pull on in order to increase the sector climate commitments. So you see that we are looking into CO2 emissions, we are looking into indices, we are looking into green building certifications, the cumulative energy efficiency investment in the sector, the energy efficiency or energy intensity, and the share of renewables. And very importantly, what also makes this happen is the availability of building codes, their development, and their implementation, and how much these are aligned with zero energy building goals. Right, so if we look at the greenhouse gas emissions from the sector, we see again that in 2022, we have actually reached again a peak. We had a slight decline around 2019, and this actually coincides with the the COVID global pandemic and the restrictions which have been put in place. And there was a slowdown of construction activities, but since then we have again a boom, and again we have reached a peak. So this figure has been already presented. We are mostly tracking here operational energy consumption and the related greenhouse gas emissions. But also, if we add to this the embodied emissions from the materials, we are essentially looking into something which is over 1/3 of the global emissions. So then the big question is, how are we going to get on track to meet our climate goals? And this is a question for us collectively, actually. So what we are illustrating here is the ideal pathway of how we should get back to 2030 and how we should follow that as of 2030 towards 2050. And what you see getting us back to that line, it means every year we will have to improve around 10 points on this index. So that means that we need to accelerate progress quite significantly. So one of the levers for change is actually energy efficiency. So what you see on this slide is actually how much is being invested globally into energy efficiency. And you see actually an increasing line here. And that's good because that shows a positive trend. Now, the figures for 2023 are somewhat uncertain because we are not sure about it yet. But there is a bit of a decline. This is what we expect, mostly due to the rising costs within the construction sector and rising interest rates. But necessarily, you still see a growing trend. Now, if you look at it in more detail in the sort of geographical granularity, you see that most of this growth is actually coming from the EU. The rest of the world is not investing or is not increasing its investment into energy efficiency and low carbon solutions. And the reason why Europe has invested a lot more into energy efficiency and low carbon solutions since 2020 is because they have made a political choice. Because Europe made a political choice to actually invest their recovery and resilience fund after the COVID impact to invest in energy efficiency. So what is the impact of these investments then? So if we have an increasing investment in energy efficiency, we have to see this in terms of energy efficiency improvements as well. And the thing what you see here in the slide is that, yes, we can see that these investments translate also into energy efficiency, but the problem is the evolution is not fast enough. So that dark blue line that you see is decreasing, but it's not decreasing fast enough. So what do we need actually more in order to significantly wrap up or accelerate the pace? And the previous speaker has already talked about, we essentially want more policy in terms of minimum energy performance standards. We need to target renovations a lot more, and we need to have credible renovation plans in place. Behavioral change is equally very important. Another solution is, of course, about renewables. So the share of renewables, again, should grow significantly. Here you see there is, again, a stagnation. So since we started off, the share of renewables across the world in the global, in the building sector in terms of heating, cooling, and electricity was around 5%. Today we are 9%. So there is a slight increase, but we should be somewhere at 11% by today, and we should be somewhere at 18.1% by 2030. So we can't continue the way we are progressing today. Again, a set of comprehensive policy recommendations and a set of policy interventions will be needed, and we need clear and ambitious plans for fossil fuel phase-out. Now, another lever that we have actually to accelerate change is the development and implementation of building codes. And I know this may be a common sense, but we assume that every country across the world have a building code, which is not exactly the case. So what you see here on this map is you see the countries with dark blue, which have actually a mandatory building code. The ones with light blue are the ones which have a voluntary building code. And actually you see a number of countries concentrated in South America as well as Africa, which have a no building code in place at all. And this is a concern simply because these are the countries and these are the world regions where we also expect population, demographic growth, and this is where we also expect constructions to grow significantly of built area over the next decades. Now, another question is, of those building codes, building regulations which exist, how many of them are actually aligned with zero emission building standards? And actually, very few. There are only 3 in our assessment that align fully with Paris Agreement goals, and implementation of these is still very early. These building codes have been in place only for 2 years, so actually what they do on the ground is still not sure yet. So just to wrap up on this status report, the overall message, as I said, is quite sobering. However, I think it is important to mention that there is evidence, so there are successes, and there are policy signals, and there are policy best practices, which again, something that we can learn from. And again, strong policy signals are creating certainty, certainty to the market in order to be able to build credible business cases in order to decarbonize their footprint. So now, I would like to focus on a bit of what's happening in Europe, because this is one of the regions which provides some of the potential policy examples and best practices. Now, what is peculiar about the European building stock is that it's relatively old. The continent is fully built, and you can see that actually in these figures that 85% of the existing dwellings were built actually before 2000, and importantly, these are the ones which are going to be in place by 2050. So it's clearly the importance of renovation in Europe. This is where all the efforts should go. Now, this is also important because actually 75% of the stock is not really aligned yet with zero emission or zero carbon goals. And renovation is happening. 11% is quite a lot, actually, but unfortunately, a very, very small share of this is actually on deep energy renovations. Now, this is going to change quite soon. The previous speaker has already announced that the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive has just been revised, has been recast, has been published just a month ago. But what I just want to say with this slide is that the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive is not just about the obligations. It's also about providing an enabling framework. It's not just about the obligation put on households and companies, simply, especially when we are targeting residential housing owners, we need to have an enabling framework which is about information advisory services, but also, very importantly, financial services. So essentially, this directive has something like a 20 years long history. So we learned probably from past mistakes with the current one. And this is now becoming broader and broader in the sense of encompassing the entire construction sector. So it's no longer just about energy efficiency. And I'm going to very briefly go through this because it has been presented already. This is all the elements which go in together. Again, this is not just about energy efficiency. It's not just about the new constructions. It's not just about the existing buildings. We all need to put this together to create this sort of positive incentive change which will enable the transformation. And then I just briefly wanted to talk about the very important change of perspective that is currently is happening across Europe, i.e. the energy performance of buildings, as its name suggests, has been for the last 20 years focusing on operational carbon footprint only, and this is now going to change to include the full life cycle. And why is this important? It's simply because if you look where emissions are happening within the time frame that we have until 2050, until we have to reach our climate goals, it's essentially, when you look at new constructions, it's in the form of embodied carbon. So it's very important to tackle these emissions which are happening today. So it's not just about focusing on future savings that we may reap in like 30 or 50 or 100 years' time with energy efficiency renovations. Now, one of the reasons why in Europe we didn't have an ambitious whole-life carbon regulation was simply because we didn't have enough data. We didn't have a very good overview of where actually the carbon hotspots are in a building and when these actually occur and what is the magnitude of these emissions. So these are the findings of a technical study that we carried out for the European Commission in preparation of a whole-life carbon roadmap. And this is probably the biggest in terms of scale and scope of such a research. So you see here that essentially material-related embodied emissions are on average 34% of a new construction. However, when we are talking about zero-emission buildings, high-energy performance buildings built according to the current standard, this can go up until 74% in Europe. Now, the previous slide was focusing on the individual buildings. Now, what matters from a climate change perspective is actually the building stock. We are talking about the building stock emissions. And when you try to upscale the individual building emissions to the building stock, and when we are talking about embodied carbon, these are only associated with the renovation and construction activities, which annually make up 3% of the building stock. It's a very, very small part of the building stock which is contributing to an awful lot of carbon emissions. So you see, it's actually 3%. The rest, 97%, the bulk of the building stock, are just being in use. They are just consuming energy. So the share of embodied as well as operational carbon, when we look at the European building stock, is slightly different. So 21% is actually associated with embodied carbon, and about 79% is associated with operational carbon. But this is, again, still very substantial because these embodied emissions are released by 3% of the building stock. Then we looked at actually what's happening if we continue with the existing status quo, with the current policies, and we see that the decarbonization progress is clearly not enough in Europe. And without a life cycle and whole life carbon approach, decarbonization will be only driven by operational energy savings, and this will clearly be not enough to reach the net zero carbon goal that we are looking for. And importantly, what you see here, these findings have been projected with about 40% increase of the building stock floor area. So that means actually a lot of the savings that we are going to generate over the years are going to be offset by more buildings, actually a higher building stock floor area. However, this shouldn't necessarily be our scenario. We also looked at what would happen if we essentially apply, as of today, all the available technologies, low carbon solutions, but also importantly, behavioral and lifestyle aspects. And we see that actually we can increasingly drive down the carbon footprint of the sector. Now, what you see here is particularly interesting is the dynamics of embodied and operational carbon and how this is going to evolve across the year. So you see that today, in, let's say, 2020, 2024, it's very important to focus on operational carbon because this is the bulk. This is basically what you have seen, almost 80% of the building stock. So that's right to focus on renovation and energy efficiency improvement. However, once we improve the energy performance, the embodied carbon is becoming more and more important and actually is going to overtake by 2040, 2045 is going to overtake operational carbon. So as I was saying, solutions exist, and it's very important that we are not only looking at renewable as well as efficiency solutions, but we are also looking at demand reductions. And this is something that is going to change actually the amount of solutions available, policy solutions, policy levers that Europe is going to highlight. It's very important to focus on the existing buildings, maybe building less as well, looking again the sizes of the buildings that we are designing and then we are using, because this is alone, energy efficiency and renewable will not be able to drive us to where we want. So finally, I'm just going to conclude with a few remarks. As I said, it is possible to reduce emissions from the building stock. We have all the solutions available today, but reducing these carbon emissions will require a comprehensive effort, and there are no single solutions, there is no silver bullet, there is no single market actor or policymaker responsible for this. We are all in this together. We need all the solutions. And finally, renovations are very important, and they are clearly more important than the embodied carbon investment. Nonetheless, if we focus on operational energy only, we are not going to be close to the Paris Agreement goal anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your informative presentation. 네, 감사합니다. 우리 졸트 로란드 토스 팀장님과 함께 이제 Q&A 세션 진행하도록 하겠습니다. Now the floor is open. 네, 바로 지금 한 분 손을 들어주셨고요. 이어서 첫 번째, 두 번째 질문까지 받겠습니다. 네, 잠시 일어나셔서 성함과 소속 전해주시기 바랍니다.
안녕하세요. 저는 현재 기후변화센터 유세이버스에 소속되어 있는 이서연이라고 합니다. 유럽의 녹색 건축 활성화 방안과 저희가 나아가야 할 방안에 대해서 정말 잘 들었습니다. 하지만 유럽이 그러한 녹색 건축 정책을 꾸준히 연구하고 시행할 수 있는 것은 자본이 뒷받침되기 때문이라고 생각합니다. 그렇다면 개발도상국같이 녹색 건축 기술이나 인프라, 비용이 없는 국가에서는 녹색 건축에 대해 연구 정책 등을 시행하기 어려울 것이라는 생각이 들었습니다. 이러한 상황에서 개발도상국의 녹색 건물 활성화를 위해서 선진국에서 어떤 일을 할 수 있을지가 궁금합니다.
Thank you for the question. I think it's a very important question. And I think probably Kelly would have been able to talk at length about what sort of local solutions are out there in developing countries, because he has worked on there. But I think there are a number of solutions, especially when we are looking at sufficiency measures, and some of these are not necessarily high-tech and highly expensive solutions, but more of low-tech, and it's really about incentivizing locally available materials and locally available solutions. Again, looking somewhere in the past, as we have seen the other speakers talking about for inspiration, I can give you examples of very expensive buildings, highly sophisticated buildings, smart buildings, which somehow didn't deliver as they have been designed. There was an important performance gap, and fixing very often these buildings were equally even more expensive. We have somehow got into the situation of locking ourselves into like design principles and design models, which also involve high capital costs and upfront investments. But this is something that should not necessarily be rolled out or should not be used as an example or as a model in countries, emerging economies or developing in the developing world. So I think a lot of the solutions are local. What I've been presenting was the case of Europe.
네, 감사합니다. 개도국에서의 건설 부문 탄소 감축 전략을 위해서 선진국이 또 함께 이행해 나갈 수 있는 다양한 전략 언급해 주셨고요. 이어서 앞서 손을 들어 주신 분 계셨습니다. 네, 질문 받겠습니다.
Thank you for presentation. 잘 들었습니다. 저는 한국도시재생연구원의 김정영이라고 합니다. 지금까지 이제 발표하신 걸 보면 에너지 효율성에 대한 것은 어떤 그에 대한 방안, 그에 대한 어떤 방법론이라 제가 잘 들었습니다. 지금 현재 우리가 지금까지 발표한 걸 보면은 건축 구조물에 대한 재료 내지는 도구에 대해서 말씀을 하셨는데 사실 일반 사람들은 잘 모릅니다. 이 전문가들은 어떻게 해야만이 넷제로를 달성할 것인지를 알고 있지만은 가장 중요한 것은 전문가 말고 개개인의 시민들, 개개인의 사람들이 실천할 수 있는 방안이 가장 중요하다고 생각합니다. 에너지 효율성부터 시작해서 그다음에 건축물 구조물에 대한 재료, 도구라든지 이런 개인이 실천할 수 있는 방안을 대해서 말씀해 주시면 고맙겠습니다. 네, 감사합니다.
Thank you again also for this question. It's a very relevant one, and I don't think it's just widely the public, but there are certain actors within the construction value chain which deal directly with the public or who advise the public, and in that case, again, designers, architects will have an important role in actually showcasing alternative construction build types, construction materials, construction or design principles which actually have a lower climate footprint. I think policymakers should also probably invest a lot more into awareness raising campaigns. In Europe, there is a good example with the setting up or establishment of one-stop shops, which are essentially community information points whereby any building owner or property owner can request free advice. There is also a discussion about incentivizing climate neutrality renovation roadmaps. So essentially individual building plans of how to renovate your buildings, because very often low carbon renovations are highly complex enterprises and a lot of risks are involved. And it's very important that you have experts who are guide you through this process, because not every member of the public, not every citizen is going to be a project manager overnight. It's very important that these instruments, what I was talking about in terms of enabling framework, so not just the policy obligations, because otherwise, if you don't provide working alternatives to citizens, they are not going to change behavior easily.
네, 좋은 질문과 상세한 답변 정말 감사드립니다. 저희가 너무나 아쉽게도요, 시간 관계상 이번 질의응답은 여기서 매듭을 지어야 할 것 같습니다. 경청해 주신 모든 분들 다시 한번 감사드립니다. 여러분 큰 박수 한 번 더 보내주십시오. 고맙습니다.